The release of Monster Hunter Wilds is creeping in, but as much as I have wanted to stay dark while waiting for it to come out, I have missed making videos. So here's a selfish personal ranking that I wanted to make. Me ranking all of the 5th gen monsters on how much I like them. This explicitly is just my own opinion, but I'd be happy to see how your guys' experiences differed from mine this gen. To begin with, a few simple rules. I've banned certain monsters, no small monsters, and no monsters that appeared before Monster Hunter World or Rise. The Apex monsters and Risen Elder Dragons that appeared in Rise and Sunbreak are really cool, but they're not exactly new, so I won't be including them. Also in this group is Scarred Yarn Garuga, who appeared in previous games but wasn't treated as its own monster before World Iceborne, so I won't be including it since it was technically in older games. And finally, as for an inclusion, Espinus, who appeared in Monster Hunter Frontiers originally, but since this game was never officially localized into English, I'll be including Espinus and Flaming Espinus. Bottoming out 5th gen for me is Zora Magdaros. I don't really enjoy this fight on its shell or on the wall. It's agonizingly slow and not very engaging. I do like the concept of a turtle or snake-esque monster with a mountain for a shell, but at this scale it wears thin the spectacle pretty quickly, since the only real interaction with Zora is breaking the magma cores and then shooting artillery at it. Overall, not an entry I enjoyed beyond the campaign encounters. 63rd, Palumu. A monster I would find entirely forgettable were it not for its subspecies. It's exactly what I imagined the Skimmers from Emily Rodda's Three Doors trilogy would look like, if you've read that. I don't think it's cute nor cool, and hopefully it's not a returnee for a while. Next, Nightshade Palumu. Its fight is either miserable or a joke without sleep res. At least the arm looks comfy. Number 61, Giratotus. I find Piscine Wyverns generally to be fairly boring fights, and this is no exception. I already disliked Lavasios, but Giratotus takes what makes Lavasios interesting, swimming in lava, and then discards that in favour of being a big mud skipper. At number 60, Anjanath. A monster I tend to see debated on and off whether or not it's boring. I used to find myself in the latter camp until fighting Fulgur Anjanath in Iceborne. I think the subspecies builds on the more normal dinosaur frame in a much more interesting way. 59. Leshen and Ancient Leshen. The Witcher 3 collaboration with Monster Hunter was really great, giving us one of the very few monsters from another world to face. And its initial quest, tracking and facing the Leshen as Geralt, was one of the more memorable event quests to me. But where my opinion droops is Ancient Leshen. It's freakishly tanky, even by Master Rank standards. In solo play it has more HP than Fatalis, and its non-standard moveset and the need for the Hunter's Runestone make it an awkward fight. Not to mention the grab attack that pretty much guarantees you'll die if playing solo. Not an enjoyable entry for me. Number 58. Great Azuchi. Early game raptors are another archetype of monster I don't find myself especially attached to. Great Azuchi's hooked tail and combo attack with its smaller brethren are its defining characteristics, and I find them memorable enough to place it at this spot. At 57 is my lowest ranked Elder Dragon, Thunder Serpent Nawa. This form of Nawa is just a stripped down version of its later encounter faced in the same arena as Ibushi. Disappointing due to its close proximity to her own more interesting form that completely overshadows this version, and the wait for the title updates to complete the main story for Monster Hunter Rise sours her for me even further. 56. Pyrarachnicadaki. I have my issues with this monster mostly due to circumstances surrounding her. Sunbreak released a large amount of fire monsters that I found to just be unnecessary. Pyrarachnicadaki is the worst in my eyes. This subspecies being the same element as its normal counterpart in an already oversaturated market of fire monsters puts it at this spot on my list, but the exploding threat attacks are pretty dope. Beatotus. What I like about it mostly is how it doesn't take on what I see as flaws in the other Piscine Wyverns. Namely how it doesn't exit the map like Vasios does, and its more interesting locale and elemental affinity, which is what I don't like about Giratotus. 54. Dodogama. Dodogama just doesn't do much besides look dopey and weirdly cute. It may be friend-shaped, but I've never found myself particularly interested in it. Immediately following Dodogama is the other Fanged Wyvern I feel generally neutral about, Great Eros. My main appreciation of this monster comes from its armor and how ready to fight Odogaron it is. Number 53, Garen Golem. Garen Golem is a monster I find interesting, but doesn't feel like it commits hard enough to its unique feature to be truly outstanding. As a larger ape-like monster, it has a distinct silhouette compared to the more iconic body type of other ape monsters like Rajang. Where it falls short for me is its lack of variance in its elemental arm infusions. Maybe a variant or subspecies that covers its unused damage types would make it feel more complete to me, but as it sits for now, I rate Garen Golem as good in concept, but missing some pieces that would make it truly extraordinary. 52. Radaman. Being as similar as it is to Uragan, another monster I'm not particularly fond of, it sits fairly low on my radar. I appreciate the expansion of their subtype of Brute Wyvern in a way that makes sense evolutionarily to me, but I just don't find the hunt very fun. 51. Banbaro is just boring to me. I don't really have any feelings towards it besides when it grabs a tree in its horns and charges. But complimenting a monster based on its charge attack doesn't really make me think my heart of hearts truly love it. Banbaro would probably make for a good early game monster in future installments though. 50. Puke Puke. I liked it a lot more before its subspecies was released. As a parrot lover, Puke was immediately visually interesting to me, but the moveset isn't much outside of its long tongue. It lick, it spit poison, it fart poison. I really do love Puke's armor, but not enough to rank it much higher based on that alone. 49. Guluyaku is a monster I hated my first encounter with, but it's grown on me a bit over time. Its different items it can scavenge out of the ground to beat players over the head with are amusing. It's neat seeing the different effects that each item produces, and as an early game monster, not focusing too hard on the pickup gimmick isn't as much of an issue as I think it is for Garen Golem. 48. Great Jagras. Great Jagras is definitely the most interesting of World's Fanged Wyverns to me. The full stomach form is a good mix-up for an early monster, and it brings a good bit of personality into this glutton. The Greatest Jagras event was also based. 47. Tetranodon is fairly similar to Great Jagras in broad strokes, namely the body type and full stomach form. Tetranodon is also just more visually interesting to me, being a platypus turtle amphibian as opposed to Jagras' big lizard. Tetranodon's use of its arms gives it a lot more it can do as well, from picking up the big rock to its signature arm thrusting attack. I think it's just an improvement over Great Jagras. 46. Aurora Somnicanth is a decent twist on its regular form, being a shift from sleep to ice attacks. I enjoy the fight and the weapons, but a little less so than normal Somnicanth. Immediately following Aurora Somnicanth is Somnicanth. Being a Siren-esque monster, I like the use of sleep and the human-like but distinctly monstrous body in the veil-like pressed on its head. It's intelligent too, being able to use shells to spark a flash. It's just a solid mid-game monster, and I find it fairly memorable. 44. Magma Almudron finds itself in a weird spot for me. It both foregoes one of the biggest aspects of its regular species identity in the creation of huge mud structures, but it also uses what it keeps in a fairly cool way, expanding the tail bowl attack moveset. I really like the sweeping lava attacks and the giant slam move. At 42, Raknikadaki. I like the webbing, I like the can't kill it with fire quest name. It's one of the rare times you see a spider monster in a game that doesn't rely on poison and finds a creative way to use the silk in its moveset. Great execution from Capcom, and I hope to see more of Raknikadaki in future installments. Number 41. Viper Tobi Kadachi. This flying squirrel gets to glide a lot more than its subspecies. The orange is a fresh look design-wise, and the poison and paralysis fits as a more predatory-looking subspecies. Overall, I'm not as attached to this version of Tobi Kadachi, but I still appreciate what it has to offer. At number 40 is my lowest variant. Generally, I like variants more than the base form of a monster because they take an aspect of it to the extreme. In this case, Frostfang Barrios makes more use of the ice from Barrios kit. The ice hazards left on the ground after certain attacks push you to think more about your positioning in both location and in the fight, For example, you might want to avoid fighting in the tightness of its spawn tunnel or risk getting stuck. I'm also a big fan of its armor, skill, and appearance wise. Gaining punishing draw with a single armor piece is awesome for build crafting mixed sets and is a staple in loads of my sets on World. Next up is ZZ Yaku, the Flashbang Wyvern. I think it was a groovy little early game raptor. Fun gimmick in the facing away from the flash from its photophores. Really great ecology in the putting of shiny objects in its nest to reflect the flash. 38. Shrieking Legiana. Legiana was one of my favourite monsters from base game World, and I was pretty pumped when I saw this variant in game. More silvery coat looks great shining in the tundra, and the same goes for its armor. Another fantastic looking set. But this is as high as I can honestly rate it. I am really not a big fan of how Shrieking will call over a regular Legiana to tag team you the whole hunt. 37. Fulgur Anjanath. In my opinion, this should have been base Anjanath. Its mucus attacks are more frequent and can actually utilize the monster's element. Plus, Fulgur's charge state is a lot more visually interesting to me, with arcing electricity on its back fans and an eerie electric glow from the creature's mouth. My distaste for regular Anjanath mostly stems from the normal T-Rex-like body and fire. It just feels generic. Not like a monster designed to have an element, but rather it feels slapped on so it wasn't just a dinosaur. Fulgur plays with the elemental dinosaur in a way that's just more interesting to me. 36. Ebony Odoberon, a very stunning beast. In its powered up form, seeing the glowing red eyes and black smoke billowing out of its jaws is just so devil-jo. And adding an element to a non-elemental monster almost always looks good in my book, but in this case I don't think it was necessary. Mostly because of, as soon as I thought back to the devil-jo similarity, Ebony Odoberon just feels very uncreative due to that. But still, the Odoberon armor does look pretty slick in black. 35. Almudron, another monster that grew on me. The creation of mud structures you could stand on to avoid Almudron's sweeping mudslides, as well as use them for jumping platforms, was a dynamic I didn't expect to see more of after Velkhana doing such a weak job of it in Iceborne. I hope to see Almudron in a future game that doesn't have wire bugs or monster riding to see how the fight can play out in a less movement-oriented style of combat. Rise makes it feel too easy to circumvent certain attacks by just jumping straight up or forwards when we could be leveraging the environment to our advantage. 34. Acnosom. I like the Parasol bird. It has pretty cool looking armor and weapons, and pretty engaging for the tier of monster it is. It bears a striking resemblance to Kevin from the Urban Rescue Ranch cinematic universe. I can't really explain what I like about it, it's just a good bird. Finally, we come to our special guest from Frontiers, Aspinus, making its debut English appearance in Sunbreak. A brutish, flying wyvern with access to fire, poison, and paralysis in its breath attacks. It can be a frustrating fight if unprepared. I like how Aspinus is just a big arsehole that doesn't care. It can harden its armor while sleeping, so it just does so wherever the hell it wants. Oftentimes it takes a few attacks to get one to wake up. 32. We have the first crossover monster in Monster Hunter World, Final Fantasy XIV's Behemoth. Behemoth introduces a few new things that we see iterated on later with Sephi Jiva, namely taking enemy, or being targeted, and using cover dropped by certain attacks to block a wipe. Having large-scale wipe attacks is something I really enjoyed, being a long-time Destiny player. I think it was done great, aside from the RNG of getting a comet to actually drop, and the fact that they can be destroyed. Something we still see with Sephi later, but I don't know, something about Behemoth just frustrates me. Though it was a fairly high point of high-rank World for me. Now, officially at the top half of the list, we have Blood Orange Bishutan. This subspecies does exactly what a good one should do. It uses a core idea of the monster in a different or interesting way. The use of different fruits, well in this case pine cones, in Blood Orange's moveset was a perfect way of expanding what a Bishutan can do. Going from a trickster with flash and poison utility fruits to a more damage-oriented path with explosive pine cones. It does have to contend with the many other fire monsters in Rise, so I've been less enthusiastic in the past about it from a meta standpoint, but in terms of design, I really love it. 30. Basil Geese. Basilgeus? Everyone's favourite badger, pangolin, bomber plane. I love the creature design here. It has a super thick hide, and its bombs grow in a way that they can naturally fall away from their stalks. You can see this when Basil wants to drop them, it actually shakes them loose. Dropping the bombs on the floor is neat. Basilgeus's relatively slow attacks mesh well with the constant floor hazards, giving you more to think about while not completely overwhelming you. It's a good fun fight in my opinion, but not one I often find myself choosing to do without reason. Regular Odogaron, the big red dog. I love the double-layered claws, the freaky scales, and of course that winning smile. Fast, engaging fight. Probably one of my favourites from my original campaign run, and my number 29. 28. Seething Basilgeuse. This variant takes the bomb in Bomb Pangolin and turns it nuclear. Definitely the kind of creature where more is indeed more. I really like the weapons too. The longsword specifically is one of my favourite weapons of all time, but the rest of the roster is top notch. Fitting for a variant. 27. Valhazark, the Corpse Dragon. First off, Effluvium is really annoying. Second off, I love when games lean more into their horror side without being a specifically horror game. Valhazark does a great job of being horrific the whole time you see it. It's draped in the rotting flesh of other creatures and has a wicked jaw full of far too long teeth. Add that to its mountain of corpses it uses on nest and it's one scary beast. Besides the horror aspect, the silvery scales underneath it all are kinda pretty. I'd love to see a version of it not coated in flesh and effluvium. Wind Serpent Ibushi is not something I expected to place this high before some real deep thought. I generally enjoy fighting him. Its Dragon Wind is unique compared to the other wind-based monsters it has, and its model is all sorts of wacky, spending a lot of time with its head upside down looking at you with its horrible inner jaws, and never touching the ground unless toppled. He is overshadowed by the wife, but Ibushi still gets this recognition from me at 26 on my list. I have a love-hate relationship with Velkhana. I like its design, I like its armor skills, the weapons, and the elegance in its attacks. You can see a lot of the time it prefers to stab with its tail rather than sweeping or slamming it as you would usually see from other monsters. My dislike comes from its ice armor granting more defense. Not as much of an issue for me in World, but in Rise it feels substantially more effective. My Velkhana hunts tend to take much longer than other hunts of the same tier. Still, just a small gripe for a generally great addition to the monster, though I do wish it took a break from Rise. 24. Everything I praised for Valhazark applies to its Black Veil variant. In addition to being a horrible corpse monster, it's covered in disgusting effluvial fungus that spits it out at random intervals, turning it into a walking biological threat. Very Resident Evil, hence the Resident Evil crossover we saw later, featuring this Elder Dragon as the target. The Farting Tiger Samurai. Magnamalo is visually striking with its dark purple scales contrasted by bone-coloured tips, ejecting purple and pink vapor from its body and during its attacks in the form of hellfire. It really sells itself as a cool, powerful monster. Sometimes it pushes that a little to the extreme, turf warring with elder dragons and even taking to the sky to fight in some cases. I did get a little sick of farming it for parts all the time, but Magnamalo is a memorable member of the cast. 22. Nawa the Allmother. This is the definitive version of Nawa, and the only of her two forms in Master Rank. It's a real spectacle, as a final boss should be. One of her more memorable attacks is pulling a heap of Dragonator drills and spinning them around the arena. From the expanded moveset to the bigger size, Allmother Nawa is an excellent encapsulation of Rise itself. Flashy. 18. Bishuten. After I gassed up Blood Orange Bishuten so much, you might wonder why I think so highly of regular Bishuten. Blood Orange I like a lot, but consider a dynamic take that changes more than it probably need to, taking Bishuten back to a more traditional fight. Regular Bishuten is exactly what I wanted from a cheeky monkey monster. It uses its tail to stand on, almost like a cartoon animal, while it pelts fruits at us in the dozens. Being able to pick up various fruits for the duration of the quest, be it Jumbo, Poison, Flash, or Para, is another great touch. Very reminiscent of Mizutsune's healing and damage bubbles. Crimson Glow Velstrax is a monster I was very excited to fight before I picked up Rise, having never fought its normal state in Generations. I was absolutely pumped for the Jet Dragon and it did not disappoint. The ambush attack and the dragon energy projectiles, as well as the wide sweeping slashes from its shifting bladed wings, always makes for a fun fight. I'm not a huge fan of the super silvery coat, but again, I'm not sure how else we would distinguish this variant without making it look kinda goofy. But the armor is some of my favourite in Rise, so I can't be too cruel to it. Number 16, Acidic Glavenus. This spot is partially inherited from how cool I think regular Glavenus is, as a fiery sword T-Rex, but Acid Glav carves its own niche. Instead of slashing with its tail, it tends to poke and thrust instead, which is a huge change in behaviour for just a subspecies. The shift in combat style while still sticking to its core idea just shows how great the Monster Hunter devs can be. Thank you, Acidic Glavenus, for piercing my heart and downing my defense. Here's the boy, Coral Puke. I think Coral Puke is just better in every way besides coloration. It has more interesting and creative attacks in its water streams, and doesn't lose any of the charming clowny aspects from its normal version. I don't have much more else to say. Number 14, Legiana. I have a real fondness for this elegant wyvern. It was the point in my Monster Hunter journey where it all kinda just clicked and I truly got engrossed by the series. It's beautiful, has a fun fight, and is weirdly Avatar-esque. The James Cameron kind, not the good one. The Vampire Dragon. In my opinion, Malzeno was an instant classic. The visuals, great. The creature design, great. The moveset, fits excellently. And when Malzeno powers up, it gets darker and uses more of its sick energy attacks. Getting hit can cause its new ailment, Blood Blight, which is kinda similar to Frenzy. It's an ailment that skilled players can use to their advantage. Blood Blight makes you take a slow DOT and nurse your healing in exchange for allowing you to heal on hit, much like a different take on Safi Jiva's set bonus. Overall, Malzeno was one of my favourite monsters in Rise and deserved its flagship status for Sunbreak. I hope to see it again. Number 12, Toby Kadachi. Toby is a good boy. It's Monster Hunter's very own Pachirisu. I like how it generates electricity via static from its fur brushing the ground and trees. Very cute and handsome, fun fight for its tier of monster, and hopefully another mainstay of the series. And here, just missing out on the top 10 is the old Everworm, Shara Ishvalda. It was a wicked first fight. Its gigantic stone golem form was truly unexpected for an encounter, and then breaking it all the way to reveal the horrible root dragon was just awesome. Now I know there's a few fellow Beyblade fans out there, so I have to mention I do love how Shara's attacks turn the ground to sand. Very much resembles Flame Libra's ability in the Metal Saga. Beyond that, I love the scale of some of its sonic attacks. If you watch the ocean, occasionally you can see it be disturbed by the giant beam attack. The grotesque root dragon was yet another of the high highs of Iceborne for me. In my heart of hearts, I don't expect to see Shara Ishvalda again, but I hope I'm pleasantly surprised by it in a future entry. And here we are, finally at the top 10. The following monsters are some of my favourites from the whole Monster Hunter catalogue. And at 10, Geismagorm, the source of the Curio. I really love giant monster fights, and Geismagorm really does it for me. The gaping maw, the hulking forelimbs coupled with its second set of smaller arms and almost vestigial back legs give it a look that's almost alien. Other elders have an extra set of quote-unquote arms, but generally have them in the form of wing arms that do double duty. But this behemoth can't fly, so it ends up just that more unusual. It truly is a demon. Number 9, Scorned Magnamalo. Magnamalo was already an excellent monster. Seeing it turned up to 11 with this scarred, furious beast was truly a sight to behold. Its enhanced Hellfire attacks skip the normal purple coloration and go straight to pink like a powered-up Magnamalo's. It can be an overwhelming fight. It's fast and powerful, and as the fight drags on, its rage explodes, driving it to shoot terrifying red hellfire that can inflict Dragon Blight. This variant was one of the best feeling fights to conquer in Sunbreak, and a real contender for one of my favourite fights of all time, up there with even Iceborne's Fatalis in my books. Number 8, the Sapphire Star. Before Safi came along, my friends and I would spend a lot of time wondering whether this giant baby was really otherworldly, or a mutant, or otherwise. Regardless, it's a beautiful specimen. Its glassy skin, like a baby lizard's, adds an extra layer of freaky once you finish gawking at the sensory organs that resemble eyes lining its head. Xeno'jiiva's best moment for me comes from when it beams all around the arena and then accidentally falls into its own unstable ground. Stupid baby. At 7, the Empress of Gold. Kol Taroth is a sight to behold. At first coated in its giant metallic coat of gold, then busting loose to assume a more agile form, we see that she's four-limbed unlike most other Elder Dragons. Eventually, at the end of her siege, all that's left are her majestic spiral horns. I find it really hard to quantify what I like about Kolv. She's strong, angry, and a girl boss. I think I'll leave it there. At number 6, the Red Dragon. Safi'jiiva is the mature form of Xeno'jiiva. We first face it in a preliminary hunt to see what the hell is going on, and later finish it in the Red Dragon Siege. What a fight. We can see its intelligence and powers on display. It can track you with certain beam attacks to bait you into dodging early, and can heal its wounds and even health over the course of each hunt until we force it to drain all of the energy it can from each level. When we drive it to the second level, it can drop the famous Sapphire of the Emperor attack, instantly carting anyone not behind cover. And later, in the third level, its supercritical state causes it to glow internally like its younger self. The armor and weapons are also top-notch. Being able to unleash the weapons by putting Dracolite into them, and the custom stat augmentation did wonders for my playtime. I love this fight, and I love this monster. And now for the top 5. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, I really do appreciate it. This took me a while to put together, and honestly I'm a bit out of practice with making content. So, number 5. Primordial Malzeno is strange to refer to as a variant, seeing as this is Malzeno's form before its symbiosis with the Curio. But it is an awesome concept. The best part for me is its use of its wings and tail as a sort of shield and spear. Really suits the knightly theme of Elgato and the kingdom perfectly. As the fight goes on, it gets corrupted and eventually going black with an almost eerie glow from its wings, being capable of unleashing devastating attacks thanks to Kurio's influence. Definitely one of the most memorable fights in Sunbreak for me. Malzeno thanking you and flying off in the final cutscene was a wonderful sight, showing humans really can live alongside monsters in peace. In the battle, I had a blast working through the relentless assault of tails and wing bashes and blasts. Primordial Malzeno does a great job of differentiating itself from its normal vampiric form. Much like Acidic Glavenus, it takes the core of the idea and shifts it without losing the identity of the creature. On the reward side of things, Primordial Malzeno's armor is so damn nice, and one of the rare occasions the feminine body type actually gets to be completely covered. And the weapons too, elegant and cool. Lunagaron, my favourite dog monster. I've actually been poking around at a short story focused around Lunagaron for a while. Not sure if I'll release it in any kind of public way. But anyway, Lunagaron is part wolf and part another wolf. Basically, a werewolf if its normal state was a wolf. First of all, I love the design. The deep blue and grey body is very sleek, and the yellow eyes and red claws suit it well, adding a flare of colour without looking goofy. Then, when it shifts to its upright stance, Lunagaron gains icy armour with spikes similar to Velkhana, lengthening its claws and back spines, as well as changing the eye colour to a glowing red. I find the fight very fun and fluid. The moveset shifting feels great to play with, going from an agile dasher to a powerful bruiser and back again. It's just so dynamic. And finally, man, I just love these weapons. The way they're kind of sealed when sheathed and unsealed when equipped is just so raw. And now, my top 3. Third from the top is Namielle. Maybe my favourite looking monster of all. Namielle's sleek black coloration when hydrated with those gorgeous lights makes it look like a perfect deep sea creature. The shift from the black to a very coral-like colour is something I like too. It shows through the texture of the flesh really well, and that texture is also very coral looking. It suits as a sea creature inspired monster. The armor looking a lot like a Splatoon character is pretty cute, but it still looks cool in the black and vibrant accent colours. The unique weapons also go hard, but like many others, Namielle has also fallen victim to world's parts weapon designs. But taking it back to the fight, I like it. Maybe a little slow at times, but I have fun with it. The water pools being shocked to make a 2-part AoE attack is pretty sweet, but I wish at least for the Arch-Tempered Hunt adjoining pools would also be shocked together to make a really big attack. A shame as that is, I still love Nemiel. Taking up the runner-up slot is Ruin and Nergigante. Ruin and Nerg is a variant, and therefore has to build off its base form in some way. In this case, Ruin and Nergigante has adapted some of its regenerating spikes to a more metallic material, making them stronger and more deadly at the cost of regrowth. I love this fight even more than its base form thanks to its extended moveset. My only gripe is the addition of bleed, but that's just because I personally don't like it as an ailment. Nergigante armor I found fairly uninteresting, but the Ruiner version's focus on scales rather than spikes and horns makes me like it a lot more. Another improvement comes in the weapons, of course. The shift from bone to metal strikes takes them up to another level, and I already liked the designs to begin with. Ruiner Nerg will always be a favourite of mine just to go and fight. It's just an honest fight between a man and a beast. And this is the last time I'm gonna say finally. Finally, my favourite 5th gen monster. When I first scribbled down all the entries, I didn't expect to find Flaming Aspinus at the top. It's just the perfect monster for me. Its behaviour is the same as its normal counterpart, being dismissive of attacks until pressured. Then it responds with its just brutal strength. Flaming Aspinus loses the paralysis effect from its fire in favour of defense down, something generally only seen in extremely dangerous monsters. But that's all just me yapping for the sake of gassing up my favourite monster. Where it all comes from is just the big boom. Flaming Aspinus' giant fireball is just cinema to me. I love the way it stances up and the charging sound. It's just what I like. It makes me think back to How to Train Your Dragon and the way you would hear Toothless whistling before loosing a fireball. And the equipment, the gear is just next level. All the weapons are fire with a chance of dealing some poison damage. Secondary effects on weapons that don't normally have them is another thing I love, especially in the Souls franchise. And finally, the armor. Take away the skills, and you have the Aspinus armor in brown and orange instead of green, but I think the more muted brown colour is a lot more likeable. It's not so in your face with the colour and lets you appreciate the details more. The coat and single armoured arm is very DMC, which I like a lot. And taking into account skills again, I love it. Intrepid Heart is like taking the Aspinus soul into you. It lets you shrug off an attack without flinching when it's charged and makes a small explosion. It lets you take some wild risks without much fear of punishment, like holding Longsword's fully charged Sacred Sheath attack for the perfect shot. And this is generally how I use it. Taking all of this into consideration, I think Flaming Aspinus is probably my favourite monster of all time, but it's 100% at the top of this list. And what about you guys? Let me know your favourites from 5th gen before Wilds releases this February. Thanks for tuning in and listening to me ramble. If you want to see more, I have been doing a little streaming here on YouTube, and you can subscribe here to keep up with any future uploads and with the live content.